Hey everyone, it's me again, Grandmaster Ben Feingold. It's March 17th, 2021, and we have another sponsored lecture. And hey, can you tell Karen to text me the sponsor? Because I forgot. Let's see. Sometimes the sponsors are anonymous. Sometimes their name is anonymous. So if they want to be anonymous and their name is anonymous, I have to make up a name. If you see what I'm saying. No? Tonight's lecture is on Harry Nelson Pillsbury. The sponsor wanted it to be on a great player of the past. And actually, this is very strange, but I'm going to say 25 years ago, but I'm always guessing. I never know how long it actually is, but I'm close. A friend of mine in Michigan who's a bookseller and a senior master at chess, he decided he wanted to publish books. And one of the first books he published, if not the first, maybe, was a book on Pillsbury. And it was written by a local Michigan player who's about 1700, but he's like a researcher. So you can buy that book. The guy's name is Nick Pope, but I think he used a pen name for the book, Jacques Pope. But I think he made that name up. But anyway, it's a very good book, and it has a lot more information than I do. Anyway, we want to thank Jay Wilson, who's here in our watching with us for the sponsor of the lecture. What happened? Okay, and Pillsbury was a very underrated player, and probably at some point before he died, he was the best player in the world. Then after he died, then it made it tougher. And he had a couple of issues that prevented him from being the world champion. And obviously, when it's a great players of the past lecture, it's also a history lesson. And I like to talk about the person and the time as well as the chess games. So as you can see from the Wikipedia article, he died at the age of 33, and he contracted syphilis at a very young age, and he never really got over it. And a lot of excuses, which are better excuses at this point in time, you know, during the careers of the older players than now, but it's still used now. Occasionally, really good players were really sick. And this didn't necessarily stop them from playing in tournaments, but it stopped them from having good results. So this, of course, was well known with Mikhail, who was always sick. So he was born sick, as they say. And he was at the hospital at probably half of his tournaments. So obviously, if he won the tournament, he was a genius, and if he did badly, he was sick. So the built-in excuse. And Pillsbury famously won the Hastings 1895 tournament, which is one of the most famous chess tournaments of all time. It had world champions and people who challenged for the world championship. And they raised money in America for Pillsbury to go to Hastings, and he won the tournament ahead of former world champions and future world champions and everybody. It was a big tournament. And then some of those players went on to St. Petersburg. And if I'm not mistaken, we have a picture in our chess club of some of the players, including Pillsbury, of them at St. Petersburg, like looking at chess. It's one of the pictures on the wall here. And St. Petersburg was like a quadruple round robin or something. And after the first half of the tournament, Pillsbury was in first, but he had gotten sick at the tournament, and he got 1.5 out of his last 9 after getting 6.5 out of his first 9. So he was in first place, and then he totally fell apart due to being ill, of course. And he died very young. And if he didn't fall apart in St. Petersburg and wasn't sick, and he won the tournament, he probably would have played Lasker for the World Championship. He probably would have won. But, you know, that's what happens. Sometimes and this was the excuse for a lot of people for losing matches and having bad tournaments between like 1890 and 1950 is a lot of times, you know, if you were sick, Didn't have great medicine back then. And travel wasn't so easy either. So anyway, Pillsbury was born in Massachusetts in 1872, then moved to New York City, then to Philadelphia. And you can see here, now, normally one of my sayings that I made up is, if you want to know how good a chess player is, you see how long their Wikipedia article is. And in this case, his Wikipedia article is woefully short. Pillsbury was a much better player than his Wikipedia article would indicate, but he did die at 33, so that's too bad. And then like this very short article, since he died so young, he was the best player in the US for quite a long time, and he won against Steinitz and Lasker many times. And one of the most interesting things about Pillsbury, and again, I have a personal special knowledge of something that you should also look up, especially if you're watching on YouTube now and you're not watching this live now, you can look this up whenever you want. Pillsbury was very good at blindfold chess, and he had the records for playing the most number of blindfold games, having excellent results, and not making any mistakes, not forgetting positions. And he also would play other games at the same time. As it points out, he could play checkers and chess simultaneously while playing bridge, okay? Anyway, the reason I have some knowledge of this is I'm from Michigan. And as you all know, and by all of you, none of you know it, and the people watching on YouTube, the thousands of you, none of you know it either, but maybe one of you does. One of the greatest blindfold players ever, and one of the greatest checkers players ever, and he was a master at chess, was Newell Banks. And you've never heard of Newell Banks, but if you look him up, you'll see. And I think Newell Banks was a little bit after Pillsbury. I don't think they actually met, but Newell Banks would play 10 games of chess and 10 games of checkers blindfold simultaneously and win all of them. And he was a very good chess player, but he was the best player in the world probably at checkers. And he's from Michigan, and he was very good at blindfold. And some people are just good at blindfold, and some aren't. You know, I don't know. I don't know why. But Pillsbury was one of the very famous, and if you read the Wikipedia article on Pillsbury, they would give him long lists of words to memorize, that he would say them forwards, then backwards. So I could do that too, except I can't pronounce them, so that's not my fault. Yeah. Anyway, you can read more about Pillsbury, obviously, on the internet, but if you buy the book on Pillsbury by, I guess, Jacques Pope, and the publisher is Pawn Island Press. That's the name that my friend called his publishing company. That's just him. But it's an excellent book. It has a lot of information about Pillsbury, more than the Wikipedia does. And you can see he would smoke a cigar now and then. The truth hurts. But anyway, he was a fantastic player, and I think he would be more famous if he didn't die when he was 33. I think that, get a long career at that point. So, all right, and he beat, I could spend hours and hours and hours looking at games that he beat world champions and former world champions and future world champions, but it's a 45 to 60 minute lecture, so I'll do the best I can. All right, so the first game I want to start with, and I have to do a new share. Let's see, I think this is it. And if I remember correctly, and I don't, either me or Spencer or both, or neither, wasn't neither, have done a lecture on Simon Winawer. Winawer was also a great player of the past, but in my opinion, not as good as Pillsbury. And this game was played in Budapest a long time ago. And for some reason, which I don't quite understand, sort of understand, probably about 85% of Pillsbury's best games that are really fun to look at, he had the white pieces. And that's not to say he didn't beat Lasker and Steinitz with black, which he did, but with white, he would just overwhelm people. And this was also the case with Kasparov. Kasparov won a lot of great games with black, but Kasparov won every game with white. And it's just like impossible to have black against Kasparov. Okay, and Pillsbury, when he was white, would just run over people, sort of like Morphy did, except Pillsbury's opponents were more famous. Pillsbury's opponents, a lot of them were top 10, top 20 in the world, and he would still run over them like they weren't there. So that's, I mean, just an amazing player, especially for, 130 years ago. Okay, hopefully you guys can all see the chessboard. If you can't see the chessboard because I made a mistake, speak now or forever hold your peace. Or have your spouse do it. Okay. So it was a queen's gambit, just like the movie. C6, the note boom variation. So white just played E3, and we transpose into a semi-Slav. And this position between like 1990 and 2010 was probably the most common position in Grandmaster chess. All of a sudden in the 90s, this just became super popular. Okay, and that's the 1990s. This is the 1890s. So I guess it's cyclical. Okay, and this is all normal stuff. Grandmasters today usually don't play bishop d6, but it was the favorite of Arthur Bisgeier, who always had black in this position. This is his pet line. Okay, and white got an e4 before black got an e5. And they traded everything. Knight f6 attacking the bishop retreats. And basically, this opening, black plays c5 and gets his pieces out, and then he's equal, or black doesn't play c5 and doesn't get his pieces out and loses. That's what's happening. Now this was in the 1890s, so I'm not sure that, that they had thousands of pages of analysis on this. And in fact, I'm already not a big fan of the move knight f6 because the knight on d7 is protecting c5 and e5. Knight f6 sort of gives those squares away. The bishops wants to go back anyway because it's potentially blocking the rook and potentially want to line your queen and bishop up. So I don't like the move knight f6, but I mean, there's so much theory on this now that I'm sure that they just didn't know what to do back then. Okay, and black played h6, which stops white from playing bishop g5, but it doesn't get in c5 quick enough. So bishop e3, stopping the move c5 because it's protected. And the problem with a lot of queen's gambits even today is this bishop, which we've discussed in other lectures. And if black can somehow play c5, b6, bishop b7, pretty happy. If black can play e5 and get his bishop out, also would be happy, but he can't do either one. Pillsbury said, no, you can't play c5. Okay, so rook e8, queen d3, queen c7. Now you could play c5 because your queen is defending c5 also, but he stopped him. Always play bishop f8 and knight e5. And strategically, it's obvious that white's just winning. White's just going forward, and black has no space. Black's bishop on c5 is completely dead. But knight e5 looks like a tactical blunder, which Winawer tried to punish. And whether this move is good or bad doesn't matter. If black doesn't play this tactical move, he's just going to get smushed. Black has no counterplay at all. Black can't play c5, black can't play e5, black can't do anything. Okay, so I don't blame Winawer for the next move, even though it hastened his defeat probably. It's better than just, going down like a punk. Just you lose, you have no play. He played bishop takes c5 because the pawn on d4 is overworked. And so questions that can never be answered and we can only guess, did Pillsbury see bishop c5 and did he see the follow-up? And I'm going to guess yes, because bishop c5 is not that hard of a tactic for somebody that level. I mean, if I take the bishop, then you take the knight. So black has won a pawn, but I'm guessing Winawer didn't see the follow-up that Pillsbury had in mind. Now, of course, if it was white's move in this position, knight g4 is very hard to meet. Because if you take the knight, queen h7 is mate. And if you don't take the knight, knight takes and queen h7 is mate. But after bishop c5, this is no longer a mating threat because my king can escape. So not only does bishop takes c5 win a pawn, but it stops queen h7 mate. So knight g4 is not a serious threat anymore. So it looks pretty good. And if I was a betting man, I don't think Winawer saw the next move that Pillsbury made. I'm not sure that I would. And I remember I was very shocked by a similar move, the same move, different position, when I was playing Steven Zirk in St. Louis. And I was like, what? Now, when Zirk played it, it was okay. It wasn't great. But when Pillsbury plays it, it's completely winning. Bishop takes h6. This is a really nice move. You're opening up black's king, and you're also opening the rank for the queen. So technically, if you take the bishop and I play queen g3 check, I'm also defending my knight, so I could take the bishop next move, and black wouldn't win a pawn, and black's king is totally ridiculous. It doesn't have any defense. And if it was white's move now, he would play queen g3 threatening mate, and threatening to win the bishop for nothing because this knight would be protected by the queen. Did Winawer see bishop takes h6? Probably not. But even if I saw it, I think I would play bishop takes c5 anyway because I don't want to get smushed. What he has to do is go back earlier in the game and find some improvement between moves like 6 and 11 so he can equalize the position. And since this game was played 125 years ago, they've done that. Okay, so he took on d4 because if I take the bishop and you take my bishop, there's no more queen g3 check because the queen's on d4. So Winawer eliminated Pillsbury's center, and he's threatening the knight twice, and he's threatening the bishop. So pretty good defense from Winawer. He's gotten rid of the bind, and unfortunately, as in a lot of games that I show, where one side gets checkmated, the queen side doesn't move out for black. So they traded bishops. Black is up a pawn, but white's pieces are all perfect. White's king is safe. Black's bishop is terrible. Black's rook is terrible. Black's king is terrible. And the knight looks like it's going to get discovered attacked. So very bad position for black. Queen f4, threatening the knight on f6, and perhaps the pawn on h6. Knight to d5, attacking the queen, and he takes it. And this is something that you're going to see if you're on chess.com a lot. You'll see in Tactics Trainer or Puzzle Rush or Puzzle Battle. You'll get positions like this all the time, right? And the answer is always the same. If you remember this pattern, this is the answer to a lot of puzzles, possibly even in your games. Now, if you check with the queen, the king runs away. The queen is doing a good job. So you play bishop h7 check. King has to go here. And then you play bishop g6 check because the bishop is attacking the f-pawn. And then you check, and then you mate. That's a very well-known pattern that obviously both players knew. So Winawer didn't take the knight because he gets mated. Unfortunately for Winawer, material's equal, and obviously his position's terrible. Black's position makes no sense. Okay, he played f6, which you should never do, attacking the knight, and now his queen defends along the second rank. White played f4 because he wants to get his rook into the game, Morphy style. And if they take the knight and he takes back, he's opened up the f-file to his opponent's king, also good. For example, in the game, he played rook e7, but if he takes, we could play queen g6 check, forking these two, king f8 defends, discovered check, king has to go to e7, and I'm probably missing like a really easy checkmate here, but if I am missing one, I can still win the queen. And there's probably checkmates I don't see also. Okay, So he doesn't take the knight. He plays rook e7, knight g6, and unfortunately, white's threatening to go to either square and then the other square, and it's checkmate. So queen h8 to f8 or queen f8 to h8. So you can stop one, but you can't stop them both. And the game's over, and these pieces didn't move. And Winawer was one of the top players of the day, but he doesn't look like it. He looks pretty bad. He looks like he better learn his opening theory. So he got really smushed that game, and that's actually very common when Pillsbury was white and he won a nice game or a famous game. Again, it reminds me of Kasparov. He just runs over his opponent and Morphy. It wasn't like the way Karpov wins or Carlsen or Karpov, where, the game, white's slightly better, then clearly better, then wins the end game, and it's smooth. Pillsbury just won the game immediately. Like, what did black do wrong? And it looked like when Pillsbury won, if his opponents were world-class players, a lot of the time it looks like they got outclassed. Like they didn't belong in the same tournament with him. And unfortunately, as I said earlier in the lecture, he died very young and was very sick the last few years of his life. So as a consequence, he never became world champion. Truth hurts. Okay, so next game is against world chess champion Emmanuel Lasker from Cambridge Springs 1904. That's actually where the opening, the Cambridge Springs, got named because it was played so often in this tournament. A lot of Cambridge Springs positions happened, so they named the opening after this event. Pillsbury beat Lasker many times with white and black, and vice versa. But Lasker was the world champion. It's not clear to me that Lasker was ever better than Pillsbury. However, they never played a match for the world championship. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about earlier, but I sort of forgot. Nowadays, there's a very systematic way they decide who plays the world champion, and they try to do it often. Every year, 2 years, or 3 years, there's a world championship match. In the last 70 years, I don't think we've gone 4 years without a world championship match. And sometimes we have them every year, especially when Botvinnik got his rematches. But back between Steinitz and Lasker and Capablanca and Alekhine, they played a match when they felt like it. And they played who they felt like. So obviously, if you thought somebody might beat you, maybe you won't play them because then you won't be world champion anymore. So Pillsbury never got a chance, and if he did, and a lot of people believe if Rubinstein had played a world championship match, he would have beaten Lasker also. I don't know. I wasn't around then, so I can't verify that. Okay, so Pillsbury Lasker, 1904, another Queen's Gambit. And Lasker and Pillsbury played more than one famous game in this variation. And starting around 1920, 1930, nobody played this anymore for black, and now people started playing it again, like 20 years ago. Even I've played it with black. It's very tricky. It's sort of like accelerated Tarish, because if you want to play the Tarish Queen's Gambit, you play c5 here. That's the main move. And playing it this way is a little different. Bishop g5 is super aggressive. The normal way to play is just to take the pawn. Takes, queen takes. You can see white's playing in a very aggressive way. Instead of just developing his pieces and castling, he's moving his queen a lot. And he's making the game very interesting. And obviously, if black wants to, he can take this. He can try to win the rook, but his knight's trapped. Or he could trade here and have the two bishops, but then he's going to lose his d-pawn. So this was actually topical at this time. And supposedly, when Pillsbury had a bad result in the opening against Lasker 10 years before, this was like the revenge. Like he finally got to have white in this position again. So he played gf, queen h4. Black has the two bishops. His pawn structure is a little strange. dc4, rook d1 attacking the queen, e3. And this just looks like normal chess now, except Lasker's king isn't going to find any safe haven. And this is the kind of question I would give my novice students when I was teaching private lessons. Does white want to trade queens or does black want to trade queens? Well, white's king can get safe by castling, and that's very hard to believe black's king could ever get safe by castling either way, because the G file's open, the C file's open, the D file's open. So white doesn't want to trade queens. White's going to try to attack that king later. Queen b6, I'm pinning the bishop. And Lasker made this decision that actually reminds me of the decision that Chigorin made in the last game on bishop takes c5. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not good, but if I don't do it, it's not good. And this is actually what I call the blackjack analogy. So I've played a lot of blackjack in the casino, more than you have. I don't care who you are. And people who are bad, which is everybody, they justify their bad play by telling you the right play is bad. Okay, which is true. The right play isn't good, but it's better than their play, which is worse. That's the part they don't understand. So Lasker was like, this position's no good. Maybe taking the B pawn is too dangerous, but I'm taking the B pawn anyway because I want to be up a pawn. I don't want to have a bad position and not be up a pawn, so I might as well be up a pawn. And if you saw the original Arthur, assuming that's the original with Dudley Moore, you've never heard of Dudley Moore or Arthur, but that's okay. At the end of the movie, he's going to marry Liza Minnelli and give up millions and millions of dollars because his family's going to disown him. Then he says, just a second. And he goes and talks to his grandmother. Then he comes back and he says, well, I took the money. Might as well have the money. Yeah. So if you're going to be losing, you might as well be up a queen or be up a piece or be up a pawn instead of not being up that. So Lasker's like, my position's no good. I might as well have a pawn for my troubles instead of just being no good. And obviously, black would like to safely castle at some point, but not only can he not legally castle because of the bishop on f8, but his bishop is under pressure, so it's going to take a long time to castle, and his king's still not safe. So he's like, all right, I'll be a pawn up then. That sounds good. Yeah. Okay, so Pillsbury castled, and Lasker played rook c8. Now, it looks like white blundered because there's a little skewer action going on here. Can somebody unmute themselves and tell me what move white played here? Even if you're on YouTube and you're watching it after the lecture, you can still unmute from the future. Anybody? Is anybody still here?
I don't really know.
I don't know is correct. You don't know, so that's correct.
I do not know. I've never studied this game before.
Yeah, you got to watch it because Lasker's attacking all your pieces, and he's the world champion, so it's tough.
I mean, he could. I mean, what's funny? I don't know. Could try that.
Trying is the first step to failure. There's a lot of you in the lecture. Nobody knows what white did here. Aren't you guys as good as Pillsbury? It's a very simple move.
Is it a Botez gambit?
No, never give your queen away. That's too exciting. Somebody said something, but I couldn't hear. It was like a ghost. I think it's my chair.
Queen d3.
Yes, for the first time. For the first time ever in this lecture, trying to learn is correct. Queen
I've never been
d3.
so right in my life.
That's right. Now you're threatening checkmate with advantage because you got a battery here. So Lasker has to do something about that. So he defends his bishop. Knight e4. Uh-oh. We got knight f6 check. That's winning. So bishop e7. Knight d6 check. And if you take the knight and I take back, my queen's hitting everything. And then you get rid of your 2 bishops. So he just stepped aside king f8, and Lasker said, I have the 2 bishops, I have an extra pawn, what are you going to do to me? And just as Morphy taught us, when you're attacking, you need to get all of your pieces involved. Okay? And right now, white's been using these pieces, and white has not been using these pieces to attack. And so I was very impressed with the next move. And I'm not easily impressed. Wow, there's a blue car. Wow. Okay, don't sue me, The Simpsons. Knight c4 attacking the queen. I was a move premature. And then f4. This is the move that I really like, trying to get the rook involved. And by trying, he did get the rook involved. And he has a threat, taking on e5 either way, winning a pawn. And f4 is relentless. He's not giving up. He's still attacking. A lot of people on the internet scoffed at e takes f4. They said, that's terrible. Why did he do that? But they did not suggest an alternative. They just said it's terrible. I mean, if white's going to play f takes e, I don't see, So it's really hard to keep the f file closed. Black could play e4 and give his pawn back and not be a pawn ahead. I don't really like that either. So the position's just bad. Queen d4, attacking the rook on h8 with mate. f6. Now, the reason queen d4 is such an excellent move is because if you play the obvious rook g8, saving your rook, now I come to Forktown. Checkmate, and the rook on c7 is not defended. The truth hurts. So that's why he played f6, never play f6, because now queen takes f4 doesn't threaten mate on f7. Okay, it still threatens the rook on c7, so he defended his rook. And then knight e5, because the f pawn is pinned. Again, Pillsbury using all of his pieces to attack, and he's playing the world champion. He's not playing, Rufus or Doofus. And now he's obviously threatening the bishop on d7, so he saves his bishop. Lasker's a good defender. Knight g4, threatening the f pawn with basically everything. All right. Let's see. Instead of taking... Yeah, no, I agree, Jamie. e4 is the safer move. I'm not sure how much counterplay you have. I can easily thwart that, but I agree once the f file is open, black is just lost. But Lasker got a lot of flack for having such a tough position. Sort of like in the Chigorin game, I think he has to go back and find a better way to play the opening, which is too late now. Okay, f5, queen h6 check, and then bishop c4 is an amazing move. Unbelievable. Because you can't take the knight because the f pawn is pinned, and you can't take the bishop because knight e5 check. It might lead to checkmate, but it definitely wins the queen. Man, talk about getting all your pieces involved in the attack. There we go. Okay, now he's threatening e6. So he defends e6. Rook takes f5 check. It's very forced that black plays queen takes rook, since pawn takes rook is illegal. And he just wins the queen for the rook. This is forced. So normally, 2 rooks for a queen and pawn is about the same. But all of white's pieces are attacking. And the e6 pawn is weak. Knight e5 check is coming. You still can't take the bishop because knight e5 forks. And white's attack is just too strong. Lasker defended his e-pawn again. Queen h5 check. The king has to stay on the king's side. Knight e5. And in this position, Lasker resigned because queen f7 is mate. Knight takes rook wins. Knight takes bishop wins. And sort of like in the previous game, Pillsbury won against Chigorin, against Winawer, where the rook and bishop haven't moved, Lasker's rook never got to move. And Pillsbury, again, in that game, he ran over his opponent and it looked like he outclassed him. But I don't think he outclassed the world champion. And when you think of games that were lost by Karpov, Kasparov, Fischer, Carlsen, the recent world champions, Anand, you don't think of this. You don't think like they just got blown off the board completely. That's very rare nowadays. But Pillsbury was such a great attacking player, one of the reasons he won Hastings 1895 and beat world champions all the time. And his Wikipedia article should just be longer. It's a real shame that he's not more famous than he is. Okay, then I have a couple of tidbits that are quite funny, I think. They're not full games because the full games don't merit attention, but the final tactics do. So you can see what a great tactician he was. Flip board. All right, now you're all confused because the board flipped. Okay, this was a very unusual opening and middle game between Chigorin and Pillsbury. Chigorin, another great player of the past. And I can't recommend either side's pawn structure at the moment. I can't recommend it. But, you know, black's rooks are on the half-open G file, and white's rooks seem pretty passive. And black's bishop seems pretty reasonable, and white's bishop doesn't look pretty reasonable. So, I don't know, I think I like black, but it's a very strange pawn structure. So, all right. And the game ends very quickly. And one of the things I want to say, the best players in the world 90, 100, 150 years ago, they made a lot of tactical blunders. Being a perfect tactician, there wasn't computers to use and do tactics over and over and over again. So you didn't see this same tactic 1 billion times, which you can do now. So there were a lot more blunders then, even with the world's best players. And if you want to see a lot of blunders, if that interests you, play over the World Championship match between Chigorin and Steinitz. Frankly, terrible. I think one of them got mated on move 9. It's not a good match. Okay. So he played queen e5. I guess he's trying to improve his pawn structure. So these are doubled, isolated pawns, so I don't think white wants to go takes and kick his knight out of d4 and straighten out the pawn structure. And instead, he made a huge blunder, okay, which is why I'm showing you this game. Chigorin played for the World Championship, but, still they blundered sometimes. And this is a good time to unmute yourself and tell me what the winning move is for black. You have to be first before everybody else. White blundered with g takes h4. And the game ended immediately. What move did black play and Chigorin resigned?
Bishop to f3.
Bishop to f3 is correct. Okay, and the people on the internet, they were incorrect, showing another way to win for black that does not win. It's actually important to play bishop f3 now. After bishop f3 check, black is threatening rook g1 mate because on the previous move, white was very nice to play g takes h4 and open that g file. Now, you can take the bishop and defend mate. You can. You have to take with the knight. That defends rook g1 mate. Now the queen's undefended. The truth hurts. So bishop f3 is a great interference. It's all kinds of tactics. It's a clearance sacrifice. It's interference. It's great. And either get mated on g1 or you lose your queen. So Chigorin resigned. Obviously, he didn't see bishop f3 check. When I used to teach privately, if my student was white here, I would be mad at them. And if they were black and didn't play bishop f3, I'd be mad at them because I always tell my students, always look for checks and captures. And there's 2 checks in the position. Queen takes e4 check, not good. Bishop f3 check, winning immediately. So if you're white, you should see that because it's check. If you're black, you should look at it because it's check. It turns out that it wins. Now, on the internet, people are like, Why did he win that way? Why didn't he go queen takes queen, rook takes queen, bishop check, and rook g1 mate? And the answer is that doesn't work, because after knight takes, there is no rook g1 mate. And that's probably the variation that Chigorin saw. He probably didn't see bishop f3 right away. It's a strange move because it leaves the bishop hanging to every white piece. So it's not the first move you consider. It's hanging to 4 different pieces. So for a human, bishop f3 is a weird move. On the other hand, rook g1 mate looks pretty good, so white was very helpful in playing g takes h4. In a blitz game or a bullet game, I would see that kind of blunder all the time at the grandmaster level. But if it was the top 10, 20, 30 players in the world and it was a slow game, that would surprise me if the players missed bishop f3 check. I mean, if white did. I don't think black would miss it. Checkmating your opponent's a good idea. So that was a funny win that Pillsbury had over Chigorin when they went to St. Petersburg after the Hastings tournament. And last but not least, maybe it is the least, I don't know, was against everybody's favorite player, NN. Okay, NN has a terrible record. And this is actually apropos of what's happening in chess right now. I'll explain later. Now, the first thing you have to realize, and I said it when the lecture started, is sometimes Pillsbury played blindfolded. Sometimes Pillsbury played simultaneous exhibitions blindfolded, just like you guys do at home, except for one thing. And this was such an occasion. Pillsbury was white, and he's giving a blindfold simultaneous. This was one of the games he was playing while he was playing several people. And even back in 1900, when this game was played, Pillsbury had the 2 bishops. What else? Okay, and the bishop on a3 is a very important bishop because it stops black from castling. So Pillsbury played the obvious move, d takes e6. Okay, it doesn't matter which way black takes back. It loses either way. He took with the knight. And luckily, even though it was the year 1900, Pillsbury was very aware of my lectures. Very aware. It's hard to understand how. He watching my streams in the future, blindfold, I don't know. And if you watch my streams a lot, one of my rules is always sack the exchange. Now, a lot of moves win here for white, but if you want to get fans, you have to win the prettiest way. Let's see what's happening here. I started playing blindfold. No! Boo. Okay. And he played rook takes e6, always sack the exchange. And after takes, there's 2 ways to checkmate your opponent. He picked the more beautiful one because that's how you get fans. If you want to get subs on Twitch in 1900, you gotta play to the crowd.
Queen g6.
Queen g6, recommended by the Botez sisters, surprisingly. Queen g6. What's funny is when Botez suggested queen g6, she said mate. And then her opponent did this and she went, no, not again. But it turns out, checkmate. Now that's a very nice series of sacrifices. What makes it nicer is he was playing a blindfold simultaneous. And now I'll give you the kicker. That's why I get paid the big bucks. About 5 days ago in the Icelandic Championship, this exact same tactic could have happened, where you sacrifice your queen and mate with the 2 bishops, and the guy missed it. It was a grandmaster. He didn't do it, and he ended up losing. Yeah. That's right. Rosen also did that. But a few days ago, a grandmaster could have sacked his queen and played this exact mate. It was like queen takes e6 check, f takes e6, bishop g6 mate. Same mate. He didn't play it. He didn't see it. And then he lost the game. And it was like move 14. So this is a well-known trick. It's been done many times. But even a few days ago, a grandmaster in a slow game couldn't figure it out. However, Pillsbury not only figured it out, but there was one extra move in his trap. he had to sack the exchange first before sacking his queen, and he did it in a blindfold simultaneous. And so that's pretty impressive. And obviously, if you don't want to be a show-off, but we all do, then you play bishop g6 check, and then you take with the queen. Boo, boo. That's not a queen sack. Terrible. Yeah. So he knew what he was doing. Yeah. So Pillsbury was a great player, probably the best in the world for a while, never played a world championship match, won the famous Hastings 1895 tournament, was the best blindfold player in the world, unfortunately got very sick in his 20s and died at the age of 33, a tragedy, okay? But he did add to the negative record of NN. NN, terrible. Throughout centuries, he can't win a game. Well, this is Grandmaster Ben Feingold for the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of Atlanta. Please like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and click on our next videos, which are coming up shortly. You can click on them and keep watching videos and forget about the real world. Or is this the real world? And we want to thank Jay again, our great sponsor. And let's see, what else? Who else do I have to thank? Let's see, Don Francisco. No, wait, that's a movie. So thanks to Jay Wilson for sponsoring the lecture. And we're going to have more sponsored lectures. And we have one question before I close the meeting. You can even say it out loud. You can unmute yourself. Then you can ask the most important question.
Hello.
I heard hello, that was it.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
I can now.
All right, that's great. This is kind of arbitrary, but I started playing chess about a couple of months ago, and I'm in school, so I'm really learning learning chess as a game on a real time budget. What's the best way for me to practice?
Is to just play as many chess games as possible. You want to play more than study. You have to play thousands of chess games. So the more chess games you can play, the better. And also, that's the cheapest. You can play for free.
That's true.
Yeah, and if two people start chess at the same time, if one of them plays 1,000 games and one plays 100 games, I know who to bet on. You got to play a lot of chess so things look familiar to you, and you can learn later after you've seen everything a million times. But it has to look familiar to you. You have to see it over and over and over again. So just keep playing a lot of chess. That's how I got better. It took me a long time, but eventually, after making every blunder 10 times, eventually I stopped. Well, not really, but I started again, but I stopped at some point. But yeah, great question. When you're just starting out, you got to play a lot of chess. So do that.
I'll be sure to keep playing then. Thank you
Yep,
very much.
lots of chess. Yep. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks to our sponsor again. And thanks from the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of Atlanta. Bye, everybody.